Good evening, good evening, good evening. Just waiting for persons to join up so we could get started. We are going to prepare for our biology exam, which is coming up in a couple of days. So we want to make sure we prepare for that. We would be looking at the 2025 January paper. That's the latest paper on the biology syllabus. That one is on. So yeah, we want to get ready for that. We want to prepare. Feeling frustrated? No, no, no. This paper is to encourage you with confidence as you look forward. The biology paper 2, paper 3 too. When the paper 3 went, that was a wonderful paper. That was a wonderful paper. It's a long time the paper wasn't so nice. But yeah, that paper 3 was wonderful. But this is the paper 2 we are coming up to. Oh, somebody did attend the HSB. That was nice. Yeah, HSB was nice. HSB was fun. Yeah. And generally, yeah, even the maths paper, the POA paper, the social studies, all of them this year CXC said, ooh, let me take it easy on them. All right. So yeah, it was nice. The exams are going wonderfully. And we are just about, come about 2 more days, we would reach CXC's halfway point. And what I mean by that is not the exact half of the season of the exams, but CXC transitions into paper 1. There is a period where all that will be left is just paper 1s, paper 1. So most of the paper 2s, most of the paper 3s are gone. The practical exams are already ended. So it will just be the paper 1s left to go. So yeah, we do have crash courses for that coming up. You all could check the description if you want to join up for the crash course. And we are possibly having a crash course for biology paper 2. No, biology paper 2 is coming up on Monday. So we're thinking to do a crash course tomorrow, depending on how much persons. It's free, depending on how much persons we will know how that rolls. So tonight we want to use the latest exam from the biology syllabus, the January 2025 paper, and give responses to it and see how we fare with it. We could see how we fare with it. Try to answer the paper. All right. Remember, this is all intended to encourage you, to help you with your preparation for the exam. Yeah. So that's the intent. So, all right, we want to jump into it. As you know, this exam is 2 hours and 30 minutes. All right, so it's 2.5 hours long. The 2 hours, 120 minutes plus the 30 minutes. It is sufficient. It's definitely enough time for you to complete all the 6 questions. You have to do all the usual instructions to the front of the paper. They always apply. Yeah. So let's get into it. We're starting off with a nice question. Your friend has just returned from a tour of South America and has brought you a bag of Jumo, a powdered food item. She told you that Jumo's ingredients include starch, reducing sugar, and fat, but you would like to verify this by performing some food tests on the powdered item. Complete table 1 below to show the following: a description of how the test is performed. Include all reagents and suitable apparatus. What you expect to observe if the food substance is present in Jumo. What you expect to observe if the food substance is not present in Jumo. An example has been provided for you. So let's go, right? So we have an example. They did the reducing test for us. They leave the starch and the fat for us to fill in. So they put out the steps. So that means when you are doing yours, you should do it in steps too, meaning you number it 1, 2, 3, how many ever steps you have. They tell you the outcome, the observation to expect if it is present, and the observation to expect if it is absent. So we have the starch test. And the starch test is really simple, but that first step, you should replicate it because they did tell you it is a powder. So I know everyone is thinking, oh, what are we doing with the powder? Well, you will mix the powder with water. You will mix the powder with water so that you want to mix the powder with water so that you could get it in. So what we're doing here, we mixing it with water. Let me just move this box across some more. We're mixing it with water. That's our first step. It should be labeled 1. I didn't put in 1, but you put in the 1. And then you want to use iodine. Obviously, you have to use iodine solution. This is a starch test. And the results is that it should turn blue-black, right? So color-wise, you are looking at blue-black for the results if it is present. But if it is not present, it should stay the iodine solution color, which is a kind of yellow-brown. Well, I'm not sure what color the Jumo is, right? But I'm just going on the color of the iodine solution, which is a kind of yellow-brown kind of color. The fats, you should do the same thing too. You should mix it, but the fat test, it depends on which fat test you choose. I am obviously going to choose the one with alcohol. So we mix in some water, some ethanol, some Jumo. Is it Jumo or Juno? Yeah, Jumo. Oh, it's with an M. All right, so all right, and you mix it in a test tube. What do you expect to see? You expect to see that cloudy, that milky white, if lipids, fats present. And if not, then you're expecting to see something kind of colorless, right? I am not sure what color Jumo is, so I'm just going to put colorless, and that will give us some marks, right? 1 mark for each part of the table. As we continue, state 3 precautions that should be taken while conducting the food tests on Jumo. And it's the usual precautions. You don't have to think outside the box. Just put the usual precautions. You will get the marks for them. Right, just for the usual precaution. You need to use enough of the sample. Some person could even put whether the apparatus were clean, the things properly sanitized. Yeah, all of that is fine. Make sure your Jumo is not contaminated. You know, it's a powder. You could have all kind of things contaminated. Usual precautions when doing food tests. You don't need to think too hard about it. Yeah. Name 2 diseases that a person may develop if Jumo is consumed in excess over a long period of time. So considering that it has reducing sugar, starch, and fats, we going with diabetes and some kind of cardiovascular disease. If you want to show off with the different types, that's fine. But you know, any cardiovascular disease from the fats and etc., you will get it correct. 2 marks, 2 marks, 2 marks. Yeah, the first question is for 25 marks. So the first question is a bit lengthy in biology. Figure 1 shows a simple diagram with villus in the digestive system. So I think a person should be very, very familiar with this diagram. It's a really simple diagram in terms of when you're teaching the number, if we just counting the number of parts you need to know. This is always a nice diagram for students to learn. They could literally draw this diagram. It's just 3 or 4 movements of the pencil. Name the organ in which the villus is located. And I hope everyone is thinking the small intestines. If you want to say whether it's the duodenum, the ileum, etc., you could do that. You can do that. So, but it's the small intestines where you will get the marks from. State the function of the villus. So the function of the villus is the movement of substances. Yeah. So increase surface area for the absorption of substances. And these 1 marks is add up quickly. Yeah? So in your exam, you always want to get them. You don't have to spend a lot of time on them. So they add up quickly. Name the structure labeled X in figure 1. Right? This kind of pipe structure going up the center. This is the blood vessels where we know is capillaries going right there. That is the lacteal. The lacteal, as is, and again, this is an easy diagram to know. This is an easy diagram to know. John discovered that the structure labeled X in his digestive system is not working properly. Suggests one adjustment that he should make to his diet because of this malfunction. He should reduce the fats or the lipids in his diet because that is responsible for the products that, when fats are broken down to glycerol and fatty acids, that's responsible for the absorption of it. So he should reduce the lipids in his diet. Give one reason for your answer. Well, I kind of already answered it. So it's basically just to write it out. So remember, lipids are fatty acids and glycerol. So that's the reason. So you know it's not absorbing that. So it means he should probably just reduce his fat intake. And you know how I encourage my students to learn this? Think about lactose. Think about milk. All those things are milk, right? Milk is fatty. So lacteals, milk is fatty. Easy way to connect the dots. Figure 2 shows an epithelial cell of the villus in the digestive system. Outline one way which the epithelial cell, the villus, differs from a typical animal cell. The most obvious one is this increase in surface area for the epithelial cell. The animal cell, the generalized animal cell, or typical animal cell as they have it, will not have that. Yeah? So the surface area to volume ratio is a lot larger in the epithelial cell. You could have written that in the reverse. The surface area to volume ratio is significantly smaller for the typical animal cell. The examiner would have read it and given you the marks. Name the structure in figure 2 which carries genetic information in the form of DNA. They're talking about this structure here, which is the nucleus. Figure 3 shows the effect of temperature. See how long this question is? We reached G. The effect of temperature on the rate of an enzyme catalyzed reaction. Part 1 indicate by placing a letter on the graph figure to point where the optimal temperature of the enzyme catalyzed reaction occurs. So we just looking for the highest peak at the rate of reaction. So we come across here, everyone would have pulled out their ruler when they were doing this exam, and you would see come down to about 40. So we are putting the letter A right there. Yeah, that's centering off. Yeah, right there. And they actually state the optimal temperature. You would have just used your ruler and pull that line down and hit about 40. I don't have a ruler, so you would have been more specific than me, but it's supposed to be about 40. All right, you probably might write out the degrees Celsius because you have to put in units because they're actually about temperature. So yeah, 40 degrees Celsius would be the answer. All right, let me know how you're faring. I hope persons keep track. If you have done this paper, if you've practiced this paper in school, let me know if you came up with the same answers as I have. I am not obviously exhausting the list of answers. Some questions do have the option to add a bit more or different answers, but some of them are just ordinary. Like this question here. Explain the shape of the graph between 0 and 25 degrees Celsius and between 50 and 70 degrees Celsius. They ask you to start with between 0 and 25 degrees Celsius. The answer is fixed for that. Yeah. So as the temperature increases, well, we know the increases from 0 to 25, the rate of reaction increases. So you see it going up. Let's 0 start here, and you see it's going up. So the rate of reaction increases. So that's what you are saying to get your marks. Between 50 and 70, when we look at the figure, we see it's going down. 50 is about here, and 70, it reaches flat out, no rate of reaction. So the temperature, as the temperature increases, the rate of reaction decreases. Why is that? Because the enzyme is being denatured. Yeah, the enzyme is being denatured, which leads to the rate of reaction decreasing. And that's our 25 marks. Yeah. So if you had put those answers, you would have gotten 25 marks. That's question 1. 5 more questions to go. So we are on to question 2. 2 scientists visited a rainforest and noticed orchids growing on a large, healthy tree. Name the type of relationship that exists between the orchid and the large tree. And I hope everyone is thinking about the types of relationship, parasitism, commensalism, and symbiosis. So commensalism, right? And then they ask you, give a reason for your answer. And the reason is basically given to us in the question. The tree is healthy. The tree is healthy. So it means nothing is wrong with it, right? So means the tree is not harmed. And then we have multiple orchids because they said orchids plural. So it means more than one is growing, which means the orchids have some kind of benefit they get. And that's basically the definition of commensalism, where one organism benefits and the other one is not harmed. Yeah. So that's the reason for the answer. So the orchids benefit from growing on the trees. And this happens in the Caribbean all the time. Huh? All the time. They just didn't give you a name of the tree, but plenty mango trees and things that have orchids growing on them. And mango season is upon us. So I know persons climbing mango trees and stuff. So they should have seen some orchids. Name 2 animals that are involved in a type of relationship named in A1. So I would just go with a very obvious one that I know, that I see nearly every day. Cow and cattle egret. That's a nice commensalism. You could have this question allows you to choose a whole host of animals. Once the relationship can be identified as a commensalism, you will get the marks. So whether you wanted to choose hippos and, or sharks and remora, you could choose a whole host of them to get the marks. The scientists later found an unknown organism in the body of water. And they were undecided about whether it was an amphibian or a fish, suggests how the structural features of the organism may be used by the scientists to determine its identity. Your answer should include two comparisons. So you need to compare amphibians and fishes to each other. Yeah? So fishes, if we start off with the most obvious thing, the skin of the fish. The fish's skin usually have some kind of scales. Amphibian skin is a moist skin. We could go with the means of locomotion. Fishes have fins, and amphibians, depending on the stage they're in, they are adapted for both aquatic and land, and they usually come with legs. All right? So you don't very often see a fish with legs running across anywhere, running in the water, right? You better use fins. It's purely aquatic, right? So I always encourage students, choose the most obvious thing, right? Yes, there are structural adaptations. You could say some fishes, depending on kind of skeleton they have, etc. But that then becomes complicated. Choose the easy one. Don't talk about fishes could have a cartilage skeleton or a bony skeleton. No, choose the easy answers. Let's go on. They're asking us about decomposers now. We're into part C. Define the term decomposer. Decomposer is an organism that breaks down organic matter. Yeah, easy. Just define it and move on. State two functions of decomposers. They help cycle nutrients and they help remove the dead, right? They basically help remove the dead, and meaning dead organisms do not build up once they are decomposers, right? And they get the cycle nutrients. They are part of the food chain. Take your marks and move on. Outline one way in which fungi can be beneficial to a homeowner or a builder of wooden homes, and one way in which they can be destructive. And when you think in fungi, remember fungi is useful to many homeowners for various reasons, from alcohol, from making alcohol, to different cheeses, and you eat mushrooms. People put mushroom on pizza and in many dishes. Yeah. Mushroom lasagna, this tastes great. But anyway, they want you to focus on the homeowner or the builder of wooden homes. Yeah. So mold could get you sick, right? So obviously mold is destructive, and mold grows when there's kind of water and thing. So you could use it as also as an indicator. And then mold shows up when there's rot, right? And not just mold, but fungi shows up when there's rot. So we could also use that as an indicator. Remember, this person is a builder of wooden homes. So if they are choosing wood to build a home with, if you see a mushroom growing on the wood, you understand that wood in a terrible state. Don't use it. Yeah. And it's not just mold, right? I just write mold here, but you could use fungi. Yeah. All right. Write the balanced chemical equation for photosynthesis and include the conditions. And this is giveaway marks, because this is one of the two equations that you need to know. The other one obviously being the reverse of this, meaning the direction, it reverses directionally, which is respiration. So you just write it out. It's 6 water, so 6 H2 and 6 carbon dioxide, 6 CO2. They ask the chemical equation, so you write it chemically, right? In sunlight, you would draw your forward arrow and you will go to glucose, C6H12O6, and 6 oxygen. You would say sunlight, you could say chlorophyll, you could say chloroplast, right? That's fine. You would get your marks. So the condition is sunlight. The condition is sunlight. State 4 ways in which a leaf is adapted for the process of photosynthesis. And always encourage students just to learn this off as memorize it. There is nothing special to it. It's large surface area. The leaves are physically thin. It's sunken stomata. It has many veins. It's highly vascularized. Just learn it off. So there's nothing really different about this. So that encourages leaves adapted for photosynthesis. Right, let's go on. This is a familiar graph, especially in the multiple choice. This is a familiar graph, especially when you're doing paper ones. This graph appears. A farmer who is growing his tomato crop in a greenhouse is concerned that the yield will be too low to supply the expected market demand. The farmer therefore monitors the rate of photosynthesis of several plants, and the results are shown in figure 4 below. Explain the shape of the graph in figure 4. And it's as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis increases until there's some other limiting factor. Yeah, there is some other limiting factor. I could tell you what the limiting factor is because they write it in. Look, they put 0.3% carbon dioxide, 33 degrees Celsius. Yeah, that's the limiting factor. That is the limiting factor. Just right? So carbon dioxide becomes the limiting factor. That's why it plateaus out. And it just, no matter how much light intensity increases, it doesn't increase any further. Indicate by drawing a new curve on figure 4 the change in the rate of photosynthesis expected if carbon dioxide is pumped into the greenhouse. So on this, if you start adding carbon dioxide, the same thing would have added, but it started adding carbon dioxide. So what you would do here is the graph would continue to go up and then plateau out again because something else will become the new limiting factor. And in this case, it will be the efficiency of the leaf, the leaf's ability to process the whole photosynthesis process quickly enough. All right. So the leaf will now become the limiting factor. So if you did this, the graph would have gone up higher. Yeah. Just clear the annotation. Let me just clear that annotation. All right, let's go on. Plants do not photosynthesize when left in a completely dark environment. In the greenhouse, the farmer notices that the shaded plants are taller and have smaller leaves than the plants located in sunny locations. Explain why plants left in the shade did not die immediately. They didn't die immediately because they have stores that they use in. So what's happening here is we have a tropism, which is in this term, phototropism, attraction to light. So the plants become elongated to reach the sunlight because remember the plant's desire is to do photosynthesis. And the reason they're not just instantly dying is why they have the smaller leaves, because the plant is using any food reserves that it has to maintain itself, yeah, while it tries to grow to reach the sunlight. So that's why it's not dying instantly. Also explain why the plant leaves are smaller, because it doesn't have all the nutrients as the plant that's in the full sunlight. So it becomes taller because of elongation. That is one of the growth techniques of the plant with the hormones auxin. So 15 marks for that question. As we move on to question 4, which shows figure 5 and 6 are images of flowers obtained from 2 different species of plants. Carefully examine the figures and answer the questions that follow. Complete the table below by comparing the structures associated with the flowers of plants A and B. So we see plant A here, we see plant B here, the stigma, stamen, the stamen, stigma. All right, and they ask you to do a comparison on the structures. So you're seeing the difference in the structures, right? So on figure A, we have the stigma. You see it's pointing to stigma right there. This long thing right here. Stigma right to the top, the stamen here. And it's on this side, the stigma down to the bottom here, and the stamen, the one on top. So the stigma, obviously it's inside, it's fixed, it's reserved. The basically plant B is basically the opposite of that. The stigma is outside. It is not completely as loose as it could be, but it loose, it is exposed. Likewise, the stamen as well. So you could put basically the same thing for plant A. In plant B, the stamen for plant B is definitely loose. It's outside. It's very, very loose. It meaning it blows, it dangles, it blows in the wind. All right, it blows in the wind. What happens to the pollen grain? Because the pollen grain from plant A will be sticky, right? It will trap onto organisms. The pollen grain for plant B will be light, it will be small, it will be high, meaning the amount it will be plenty. Yeah. Indicate most likely the agent of pollination for each one. So you know plant A is insects or some kind of organism, and plant B will be the wind. Yeah, plant B will be the wing. So it will blow all that pollen all over the place. Figure 7. Figure 7 is a diagram of a whole and half pieces of coconut. Carefully examine figure 7 and answer the questions that follow. Use the diagram to identify the method by which the seeds of coconuts are dispersed. And they say use the diagram, but we all living in the Caribbean. We know what happens with coconut, right? It's water dispersal, right? We always see coconut trees near beaches and with plenty of water, etc. Coconuts are able, and the next question goes to tell us, suggest 2 ways in which the seeds of coconut adapted for the method of dispersal identified in C1. We know coconut is buoyant. It's able to float. Yeah. And we also want to say that the nuts of the coconut, the seed, is protected. So a tool is generally needed to damage it. Yeah, if we remember the coconut that falls, it has a husk and everything. You don't just get that by just saying, oh, I just feel I'll just screw the nut. No, right? Generally, you use a tool and cut it off, etc. So being familiar with the coconut, they just put this drawing just for so. Yeah. We all know what coconuts do. Plants are capable of both sexual and asexual reproduction. However, plants typically only reproduce asexually when they are damaged or are not within proximity of other members of their species. Explain how these two types of reproduction impact the genetic composition of the offspring. Yeah, and they give you plenty space, more space than you would actually need. Just for 4 marks that's way too much space. But basically, what they want you to say is talk about the amount of variation that's included by plants. And I'm doing it simply. Asexual reproduction leads to identical organisms, meaning identical offspring, non-variant, and sexual reproduction leads to variation. So if the offspring will be very different, so the genetic makeup will be different for each successive generation. That causes variation. So they could have defenses against diseases or drought or something that may pop up. But the asexual reproduction offspring, once the conditions change, trouble for all of them. Yeah. 4 marks. This is the 15 marks for question 4. So going on to question 5, ask you to define the term genetic engineering, and that's simply altering the genome of an organism. You want to somehow manipulate the organism's DNA. All right. So once you alter the genome, and you do it artificially, yeah, doing it artificially. The first, let me just make it a little bigger. The first genetically engineered synthetic human insulin was produced from bacteria. State the name of the medical condition which is managed with insulin therapy. And I hope everyone is jumping up if they get this question. Yeah, you don't need to think too hard for this question. There are 4 broad categories of diseases. A pathogenic disease is an example of one of these categories. List the 3 other categories of diseases. I would have preferred this said infectious. Pathogenic, infectious would have been the better choice for the word there. But nevertheless, the question asks us to identify the other categories. Physiological, we have the genetic, hereditary, and we have deficiency. Which of the following categories of diseases is the medical condition named in B1 an example of? So if you mentioned diabetes, whether you mention diabetes 2 or diabetes mellitus, diabetes is fine. You know that as physiological. Yeah, physiological. Something is wrong with the pancreas. Explain how insulin therapy is used to manage a medical condition named in B1. So we back to that B1 part. What does insulin do? Basically, that's what they're asking you. Insulin lowers the blood sugar levels. How does that happen? Because glucose is converted to glycogen. It's that simple. 2 marks. Well, you didn't need to say all that, but 2 marks. Easy 2 marks. We continue on with part C. The measles virus is an example of a pathogenic disease. Patrice has contracted the measles virus and has a high fever, cough, and runny nose. Name the process which prevents Patrice from catching the measles virus again, and explain how this process works. And they give you quite a bit of thing for 6 marks, quite a bit of lines to write for 6 marks. Now, this part, you could actually take up some time writing for your 6 marks. I will do it simple. I will do it in a simple way for you. And say active natural immune response, right? They ask us what it is going on with Patrice, yeah? So the body has to recognize the pathogen. I don't know if you know the method of that. If you do it, know it, put it in. Yep, this is a question where you should put in all the information that you know. They give you the space for it. So once the pathogen is recognized, cells can produce to attack it. Or they produce antibodies. The antibodies will coagulate to the pathogen. It identifies cells to attack it. Remember, there are things like phagocytes. They are part of the immune system. They will attack these cells, they will break it down, they will destroy. More antibodies are produced, and that goes into a full immune response. Remember, she started getting signs and symptoms, so it means the virus, the viral load became such that it produced signs and symptoms. She had the high fever, cough, and runny nose, right? So as the viral load decreases within the body, the signs and symptoms will decrease. She gets over it. That's why we said it was natural immune response, because her body is doing all the work, right? She didn't get any vaccine or anything. Her body is doing all the work. But the next time she encounters the measles virus, her body will remember it. There are immunoglobulins for memory. Her body will remember it and be able to react faster than the first time. And it will react so fast that her body will not produce any signs of symptoms. So it will seem like she never get the disease again. Yeah, because of how fast her body would react in the future if it ever comes across this virus again. 6 marks. And we are going on to our final question. Question 6. They're telling us about Jacob, who experienced headaches and eye strain while reading. He visited an optometrist and discovered he was long-sighted. Define the term long-sighted. The long-sighted, you could see far away very good, but nearby, you don't see good. You see it out of focus. So the light is not bent enough from objects nearby. Yeah. Jacob receives glasses and no longer experiences headaches or eye strain while reading. Figure 8 and 9 shows his vision before and after receiving corrective lens. All right, vision before receiving corrective lens and his vision after receiving corrective lens. Draw appropriate lines on figure 8 to show Jacob's vision before receiving the corrective lens, and figure 9 to show what occurs after the use of corrective lens. Ensure that you draw the corrective lens. Okay, so in the exam, you will pull your ruler and you will pull your ruler and you will pull a pencil. And I don't have a ruler, so let me just do this. Let me undo that. Oh, I can draw a straight line. Why didn't I think of that? I could draw straight lines, man. Right? So, and I am going to draw a little box here. So I pretend any box is the little object, right? So, yeah, right? So this is what you would have drawn if you were drawing the one where he get the lens. Try to draw the same distance. Let me try to draw. He have glasses now, right? So those are the glasses. The lens, and remember, for long-sighted, it will be convergent. It would be convergent. It would be convergent lens, right? So draw these straight lines, and the lens would start to bend the line. So just draw it coming in a little bit. And then draw it falling there. All right. And it will converge right here. Obviously, you should put in some labels, yeah? I'm not going to put in labels. So this is his lens. It is a convergent lens. So that's why it has that kind of elliptical shape, because it's a convergent lens. Or convex lens. You may know it as convex. All right, so that is the drawings that will get you the marks. Let's continue on. So 2 marks and 3 marks. 1 mark for putting in the lens, right? Explain how the use of the corrective lens drawn in B1 on page 22 corrects Jacob's long side. Your answer, state the type of lens used. Well, basically, they're just asking you to put the drawing in words. So the lens starts to bend the light before it reaches his eye. Before it reaches pupil and iris and everything, it starts to bend the light. And then when it reaches the lens in his eye, the lens finishes bend the light. Yeah. So the light is able to converge onto his retina. 3 marks. Color blindness is a sex-linked disease. Jacob is not affected. However, his wife will, while not affected, is a carrier for this disease. Using a genetic diagram, show the cross between Jacob and his wife. And they give you some blanks here and they want you to fill in. So you have to define the alleles. So we are obviously going to use, well, what are we going to use here? Yeah, what's it? We are obviously going to use R. Capital R for normal, common R, which we know is the recessive R, for color blind or color blindness. Yeah. The parents' phenotype, well, we know Jacob is the father and the wife will be the mother. All right. So you could call them that, and we know that the female carrier and the male, I could put in Jacob. Jacob is the male, right? Jacob male. He's normal. It says he's normal. His wife is a carrier. And then we put in the genotype. We know female is XX and male is XY. The carrier part will mean she is heterozygous, and they said it's sex linked. So let's spread it out. We know Jacob would only have one X, so his X would have the dominant variation of the gene. And then you just do the cross. You just do the cross. Let me draw some lines and write up the cross now. Yeah, you just do this cross. Once you work out the cross, you will get it. And obviously there are lines that come down and go across. Yeah, because you could make a Punnett square, or you could do that the line diagram. I always encourage students to do the Punnett square. It feels so much easier when you do the Punnett square. Yeah. So let's just type in the alleles. X R over here. X. Come on. Down here, we do X, capital R, and over here, we put Y. All right, so once we complete these things, over here, we go, and over here, we will get this. So this is our outcome of our cross. Yeah, this is the outcome of our cross, and we will get our 5 marks. You could have written the allele that of interest, meaning the R, superscript. Nothing is wrong with that. Yeah, nothing is wrong with that. You would still get the marks. Based on the results of the cross in C1, state the probability of Jacob and his wife having a boy who is colorblind. Yeah, and that's why you have to include the X and the Y, right? Because now they wanted to have a boy who is colorblind. So we are looking for the recessive for XY, which is only 1 out of 4. And 1 out of 4 is 25%. And that's our last mark for our 15 marks. So yeah, so 5 questions for 15 marks each. That's 75. That's 75 marks. And then the first question for 25 marks, which means this whole paper is out of 100 marks. Yeah. So that is a look at the biology January 2025 paper 2. Do let me know how you all would have fared if you did this exam. Some of you may have done this exam, and I do think you could do this. The January exam is going to come wonderful. You're going to enjoy it. We are going to prepare for it. I do encourage persons use the link in the description. Join in for the crash course. Let's see if we get enough people to do this crash course. And you could even join in for the others. We would try to do more lives, but we know the exam for this is on Monday. Yeah. So I want to wish everyone a wonderful evening. I am everyone's favorite principal, Mr. Roach, wishing you all the best for your night. Take care.